Welcome all. Coleman Report Live, October 17th edition. American Bankers, John Riossi. John, thank you very much for joining us. We have Katie and Lance as well. So let's get into it. John, we really appreciate your reporting, but first we're going to ask some poll questions, which we like to do. And this is to near and dear Lance's heart. Is your institution preparing a litigation plan between now and the end of the year? And we probably should have been more precise, not a litigation plan of the institution, Lance, but an SBA plan for a specific loan.
That's right, on a specific SBA loan, and I expect quite a few positive responses on this. Not as many as I thought.
Yeah, and that's what we're telegraphing Lance's webinar on preparing litigation plans. Blatant self-promotion on October 23rd, Lance, but that's always one of your best attended webinars because the nuances of this stuff are so important. It paid.
Absolutely. If you want your legal expenses covered, you better know how to do a litigation plan.
Follow-up question, what about a PDK? PDK is a purchase demand kit, and that is where we actually put together the paperwork and putting it to SBA. Lance, are we ever going to see this SBA 1 promise going through where they said PDKs would be automatically generated?
Well, you know, Bob, as we all know, SBA 1, everything was hot and heavy for a year or so, and now it's slowed down. I do hope and expect to see the PDK part of it functional at some point, but for now, we still have to do them the way we have for the past few years. And but one thing I want to point out, being able to prepare a proper purchase demand kit is so important because as participant lenders, we wouldn't do this if we couldn't get paid on the guarantee.
Right. And Lance is going to be doing that webinar on Wednesday, November 6th. And finally, Katie's been doing a lot of stories about Main Street optimism. And I want to know if your personal experience with your borrowers and your footprint is matching our reporting. We're reporting that all-time small business optimism is high, Main Street optimism is high, and I'd like to know if that is consistent with your experience. Very good. John, what's your opinion about that? Do you track that at all?
We don't track it beyond anecdotally, but I do talk to a lot of people, and I tend to fall into your camp that that it's high and lenders are eager to lend, and more importantly, borrowers are eager to borrow.
Yes, yes. It was interesting. Joseph and I were at the National Association of Commercial Loan Brokers, and one of the themes that came out of that is borrowers are willing to borrow, but their debt is approaching all-time highs, and that's a little concern for the industry. Do you see that? Not beyond the SBA numbers. I just had a chance to talk with the head of key banks, SBA lending, and they are still very happy with their asset quality. So for what that's worth, they're seeing no trouble. And that's consistent throughout the industry. I mean, there's some hiccups, but no one is panicking the way we were in 2008, 2009. Hey, John, you've been doing great reporting on SBA. What's behind the numbers? 7A is down, but 504 is up.
Well, I think the 504 number is interesting because it's an example of one specific move that SBA made, in particular extending the duration of 504 loans. How it has a significant effect. They were up, not significantly, but they were up at a time when 7A, the big program, was down a fair number. I don't think it's anything to worry about. I think I accept the SBA explanation that more banks are doing loans conventionally.
Right.
So they're not at all worried about it. I guess it's kind of expected. But still, 7A is down, 504 is up, and you have to look for the reason for that. And I can't find one beyond the extension of the loan durations. And just on a personal note, my niece is a dentist, and she just got a 504 loan to buy a building for her practice.
Awesome. Hey, You've been following the budget. We have a CR through November 21st. I'm not going to get into the weeds on the subsidy GAO report. Do you think it'll come out by 21st, John?
No.
Who knows? That's an unfair question because there's no way.
Unfair, but it just, you know, the last time I talked to them, they were in the beginning stages of working on it, and I just don't think they could pull it together that quickly.
I tend to agree. Hey, what's going on with this? One of the notes in the budget is SB Express was proposed to go to $1 million. A, where are we on that? And B, how do you feel about it?
I'm hoping they do it because they have mentioned, and the numbers bear this out, that growth in the SB Express program is slowing down. It's probably true that the $150,000 limit is outmoded, that people just need more than that in a lot of cases. Presumably quadrupling it to $1 million would take care of that. And I know from talking to the lenders, they're very supportive of it. They want to see it. There are, any number of SBA lenders who sort of build their business, or a lot of their business, around SBA Express lending. So
absolutely. And the main advantage to that in my camp is speed to market. We were at this trade show where they're talking about funding overnight, same day funding within 2 days. And when you have an express loan, you're using your own forms, your own policies, your own procedures. If it takes a 50-50 split on the guarantee to get a deal done as quickly as possible, as opposed to I lose it, I'd rather split the risk with the government 50-50.
I think the lenders would agree, the borrowers rather, would accept that as well, because right now they're accepting much higher rates of interest and much higher out-of-pocket costs in exchange for speed. So
right. Final question for you, John, is where are we with our SBA administrator hearings? Is anything going on in Washington these days that could slow that process down?
There is one thing that's going on. I don't want to get into it.
But I'm not either. I'm not touching that one.
Yeah, grabbing everyone's attention. And I think with this, it's just a matter of when. Not everyone agrees that it's a matter of when, not if. And from talking to people at SBA, they're awaiting the new administrator. They're in very informal contact with her, and they're eager for her to come on board.
Awesome. What else are you working on, John? Anything else on your plate?
I'm working on talking to a lot of the SBA lenders who had increases. Within that number, that decline number we talked about, there were still a number of SBA lenders who grew their businesses. And in these cases, this economy, the way things are, it's a matter of choice. And they are choosing to continue pushing a lot of loans through SBA as opposed to other means. And so, to get a sense of why they're doing that, I'd also like to look at franchise lending. I know that seems to be a big emphasis, expanding franchise options at SBA. And I think it's helped a lot of the lenders. So,
John, as always, I appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much, John.
It's my pleasure.
Lance, we got a question from Tamara. I have no idea what she's talking about. I guess there's a problem with our data pack. I don't even know what that is. What's she asking here, Lance?
She's just talking about her, her Paris score. It showed her having a late 1502 report. I don't know if the report was actually late. Certainly, it's if there's a discrepancy in what's reported on your Paris score in any of the categories, you can reach out to the Office of Credit Risk Management and point that out, and they'll fix it. It's not quick, but if you haven't had a late report, the other thing that happens is sometimes there's an error in a report that you send and it gets kicked back. Sometimes that will create a late 1502 report. As we all know, on the Paris score on the 1502 reports, the only way to get the best score is to be 100% on time with your 1502 reporting. One late report drops you from a 1, or takes you from a 1 to a 3. 2 late reports gives you a 5. So it's very
Lance,
critical.
What is the definition of a late report?
Well, it's 10 working days after the final day of the month. So
This is quarterly, right?
your 1502 report's done monthly.
Monthly. I am corrected. Okay.
Yep.
Shows you I'd be late. Very good. Nothing new on this. This is a story Katie's going to be covering. Every year, the Inspector General at the end of the fiscal year issues their report card for SBA, and they say these are what we believe are the challenges for the agency. Nothing new on this. It needs effective human capital to carry out its mission. Well, that goes for our organizations as well as the government. So I don't see that as that. Obviously, we've been talking about SBA continues to improve its risk management oversight practices. They are now the regulator, and we're going to have more and more oversight. Correct, Lance?
That's absolutely correct. SBA has been given the tools by Congress to manage the process, and those lenders who are not following the rules have the potential to, first of all, have their lending authority taken away, but they also have the right to do fines now.
Yeah.
Hey, Bob, one thing I wanted to point out on the 1502 report, all of you who are involved in SBA lending, if you'll just go into the SBA's website, go in the search box, put 2019 1502 reporting due dates. It'll give you a list. That way you can keep on time.
Very nice. And finally, Inspector General, that's what they live for, reducing improper payments. Those are payments that the lender has received on a guarantee that the Inspector General says, oh, no, that was improper, and we want the money back. And that can cause a lot of grief 2, 3, 4 years down the line. But I'm looking at those, and I read these reports. I don't see anything egregious there, Lance.
Typically not. The IPERA review, which is what SBA that's the acronym for improper payments. Typically, they will take a cut. Usually it's going to be loans in certain categories, and the Inspector General will review the work of Fresno and Little Rock and Herndon in the determination the liquidation loan officer at those places made in paying a guarantee. In most cases, they won't find an improper payment, but it's their duty to make sure they're only paying the guarantee when the guarantee is owed.
We continue to talk about 7A. I'll take this one, Katie, so you don't have to sweat it. But we're prepays go over 18%, which means voluntary prepayments, whatever. But the market remains strong. We had Bob Judge on last week. He explained that to you. There's the chart. Your eyes can glaze over that. But the takeaway is the market is still remaining strong. There's an appetite for these type of programs. And as long as the loans are as well as paying well, the secondary market is going to support us. And Sandra says you're absolutely, she clarified on that Coleman 1502. It says the data pack lets you know which loans info were not received in the 1502 report. So I assume what we're saying is we need to double check what's on SBA's books and what's on the 1502, right?
Absolutely. You're going to want to look at your information and compare it and contrast it to what SBA has in their system. One way to see what SBA has in their system, you guys who use eTran, you can go into eTran servicing and do a search and get a list of all your loans and what the information that SBA currently has.
Katie, let's bring you into the conversation. You wrote about the NFIB, National Federation of Independent Businesses, and there we go. And you're following this pretty closely. You continue to see all these reports saying, hey, we have great Main Street optimism.
Right. I mean, in this last month, it dipped 1.3 points, but it's still at an all-time high, so I don't think that's a concern at all. And NFIB Uncertainty Index did raise about 2 points in September, so that could be a problem, but that's probably caused by rising tariffs, and that probably will be able to work with that.
Very good. And then you're going to be writing about a report on Monday, and I'm glancing at this. I don't see the source, but again, 65% of U.S. consumers feel good about supporting small and medium businesses. And they're the takeaway on this, Lance and Katie, there very much has been this movement to support Main Street and to shop local.
That's been going on. In fact, Bob, I was trying to post something on LinkedIn. I had an article I wrote in 1995, Bob, about small business optimism during the 90s and the trend for people supporting small business. I think one of the challenges every small business has now is online shopping. And I was talking to a small retailer the other day who was talking about developing an online site where they could buy products from them. And I encouraged them and gave them some information. But there is a move. I'm a strong supporter. You need to, if you're lending to small businesses, you need to be buying products and services from small businesses.
Yeah. And also, if they're going to go online, how are they going to differentiate themselves from Amazon? Because they can't compete with Amazon. What products do you have?
If you can buy it cheaper on Amazon, nobody's going to come to you. So you have to offer
Or
something.
even pay more. Even if you pay a little bit more than the store.
Yeah.
Hey, what are you going to write about on Friday for Fraud Friday, Katie?
Okay, so for Fraud Friday, we're going to be covering an Alito bank executive who recently pled guilty to bank fraud. What he had done is he had been involved, he actually had an ownership interest in another business and had convinced his bank to lend to this business. And that's obviously a problem. The bank eventually did go under. In 2009, they received $4.1 million in aid through the Department of Troubled Asset Relief Program. And in October 2011, the bank failed completely, and the FDIC covered the losses in excess of $70 million.
Yeah. And what he did was, the crime was a false statement to his board. In other words, he had an ownership position. I don't know what the business was, but he had and he actually got personal loan funds. He was executive vice president. I want to be very clear. I am not defending this man. I am absolutely not defending this man. But Lance, we have another case of a community banker going to jail 10 years after the fact, and no one on Wall Street.
Well, one of the key things here, you don't see this happening in larger banks. For instance, my institution issued a policy about loans to employees. It was employees all the way from teller to the CEO. Your larger institutions have systems and policies in place to avoid this. Small community banks, on the other hand, quite often don't. And when something like this occurs, it's always amazing. When the bank closes, you almost always, the FDIC is going to find something.
Yeah, and that's just, and this is 10 years after the fact. Hey, Joseph, were we going to do the poll question on this? We'll do that next week.
No, we'll do it next week. Yeah.
Okay. I strongly encourage you to apply for one of these categories. If there's a category that is underrepresented, we will do the shifting for you. These do not have to be extensive nominations. We want a little bit of information for you. The judges for this year were the winners for last year. Last year we had some very amazing submissions, but we also had some very bare bones. So be sure and get your submissions in. And this is our way of giving back to the industry by honoring who our outstanding professionals are. Please take a look at that emerging under 40 category. We had, I think, 10 winners last year, so we do not, obviously all the other ones have won, but emerging, there's a number of categories on that, and we'd like to do that for deserving people for the resume, and of course, the 5 SBA Business Development Officers of the Year.
Hey, Bob.
Go ahead.
I just want to point out that I'm not eligible.
Lance.
I'm not eligible for the emerging
Especially if you're 40.
lender. Hey, Bob, the emerging SBA lender under 40, not me.
Yes. And last year we had a loan closer, I believe, in that. These are people that the company recognizes as being a strong participant. So if you have a superstar, it doesn't matter what the job description is. If you have someone who's critical to your operation, It doesn't have to be the manager. It doesn't have to be a BDO. Someone who just makes the trains run on time and is very thorough and very proficient. So encourage you to do that. These are our upcoming webinars. And the Lance is doing, as we said, the litigation plan, different than the PDK plan. I'm doing the 4th annual medical practice. I should have had John's, his niece sign up for that. And of course, we're gonna do a better job on USDA. We're gonna do a very good job on that. I decided to go solo on that, Lance. I didn't have you, and I didn't have our subject matter expert, and that was one of our unfortunate fails. So we're gonna redo that. We'll do that. Hey, Lisa asked a great question, Lance. I don't have the answer. If a borrower submits an application for a 504 loan, then withdraws it, goes to another bank and applies for a 7A loan, does it have to be sent in GP?
It depends on whether the loan was actually submitted. I mean, if the bank just gathered information and was reviewing it, the answer, you can go ahead and process that PLP. But if the 504 loan was submitted to SBA, then it would have to go GP. Right. Same thing's true on any other loan. If a borrower goes to Bank XYZ across the street and submits an SBA application, and let's say they put it in E-Tran or SBA 1 and click submit, well, and then they withdraw and come to you, you can't do that PLP. It's got to be done GP. But again, in this case, a lot of it depends, because as a SBA lender, we all go through a period of gathering information, underwriting the loan. If it's been submitted to SBA, you're going to have to go GP.
These are the upcoming industry events. NADCO is in session right now. NAGL's end of the month. National Rural Lenders Roundtable. That is a free event sponsored by Thomas USAF. It's a great event. And of course, our SBA Secondary Market Summit, first week in January. We're looking for good weather on both of those events. And I think that'll be the first time I get to meet Katie. Hey, Joseph, Michael, make sure you make a note to list all the regional conferences for 2020. I believe we have some sort of list. And then with that, thank you all. Have a nice weekend. We'll talk to you next week.
Have a great weekend.